Oh, listen, you sit down.
I'm good, yeah. I don't need any help.
Sit down. Get a load of this.
Do you just enjoy watching me struggle or something?
I'll sit in your spot so I can sort it out for you.
Yeah, right now it's going to record my bowel sounds.
Alright, check that.
3, 2, 1. Right.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of... I was about to say the Hippocampus. Making it the podcast.
Reload. Yo, guys, welcome back to another episode of Making It Podcast. I am Suga.
I am Faisal.
And we are just out here trying to make stuff whilst doing full-time jobs as doctors. So, we're coming up to the end of the first season. Woohoo! Consistency.
It's taken a while. It's been within 2-3 months.
Yeah, but I'm glad that we got here.
Yeah. You've done all right.
Yeah. And I think today we're just going to talk about stuff that we've been up to in our real time, and also just touch up on the big topic of monetization, and kind of just explore, is it something that is absolutely essential when you are creating, and is it the main reason why people often create these days?
Yeah.
And also we're going to talk about Faisal's current new ventures, which is exciting.
I feel like I'm in the hot seat today, yeah.
Before we start, happy birthday!
Oh, thank you.
He is 46 years old.
Thank you very much. 45, actually.
Okay, so I wanted to start off with congratulating you on starting up your new, how would you describe it, medical education platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
It's called Hippocampus. For those that don't have a medical background, it's actually a really clever name and I absolutely love it. So Hippocampus is an area in your brain. It's an anatomical structure in the brain which is responsible for, is it memory?
Yeah, short-term memory, yeah.
Yeah, so memory. But also, it's also like a play on the word, like hippocampus. When you think of the word campus, it is like an area which you learn stuff, where you find other people who help you learn stuff. It's an entire university campus.
Yeah.
So I feel like Hippocampus is like this online educational campus where you're bringing medical education accessible to not just medics, but to the public.
Exactly, yeah. Well, you knew about the name way before pretty much everyone else.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just and also our little mascot is a little hippo. So the idea is that just it's like a hippo at campus, sort of trying to replicate some sort of online medical school in some sense. That's the kind of feeling I wanted to kind of give out. So hopefully we'll work our way towards people seeing that as our brand.
Okay, so let's rewind into way before you actually started. Because it's only been a couple of weeks since you released videos and stuff on Instagram, TikTok, and also YouTube. So why did you want to start this? What was going through your brain when you sat in your bedroom and you thought, I want to create this?
So I think the idea for it kind of came about literally about 4 or 5 years ago. This was a long time ago.
So you would have been a medical student then, right?
I was towards the end of med school, and I was I knew that I love to teach. I love medical education. I loved the idea of making something online where I would somehow play a part in medical education or education in general. And obviously when you're teaching something, you're obviously going to teach something that you're good at or and it just so happens that I felt like I could maybe make an impact in some way or another to the world of medical education. And sometimes I don't know if other founders or people do the same thing, is that I come up with just names, and once I see a name, I'm just kind of oh, maybe I should make an idea out of it. And I had the domain, the Hippocampus, for quite a while, but I kind of knew what I wanted to make out of it, because obviously like I said, the clue is in the name that you're sort of creating an online medical school sort of thing. But at the time I was sort of juggling loads of other sort of interests and ideas, and I was I don't want to create something just for the sake of it, especially in the last couple of years. I realized that you have to, if I'm going to put my mind to something, it's got to be something that I'm willing to kind of fail at, or willing to kind of go through a lot of ups and downs for 3 to 5 years at the least. I shouldn't expect immediate success. And so it took me some time to sort of come to the point where I was you know what, okay, from a business perspective, this is sort of where I'd like to focus my energy.
So is it because it's also kind of combining your full-time career in medicine, so it kind of just feels like it's a bit more sustainable at the same time,
Yeah.
and also, like you said, even if things don't go in the way you hope it to go, the process of you actually having a reason to make medical educational content, which you can then actually reuse for other things, even if this doesn't go in the direction you want, right?
Yeah. So it was like, it was quite kind of like a nice culmination of like the things that like I'm kind of good at, or like I spend most of my time doing. So number one is being a doctor. Obviously, I've spent all this time sort of accruing all this knowledge, and I like teaching as well. So kind of, even just teaching alone, even if it's just one-on-one or just at a hospital or giving a lecture or something, I really enjoy that. And thirdly was this whole idea of creating, like packaging that into a nice kind of like videos or audio visual content. And so I thought that would be such a nice mix of all those three things, to the point where I could see myself doing it for the near future, for like 3 to 5 years, even if I didn't really see results. I thought that, I'd be benefiting people by teaching them. I could maybe hopefully make it sustainable by making it a sort of a business, and maybe hopefully bringing in like paid products and services down the line, which could, maybe sustain sort of my other interests or just the business itself. So yeah, there was a lot of thinking and like thought processes that went behind behind the scenes before I started.
Okay, so I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate here. So, and I think it's probably a question that anyone would always get asked when they're starting something new, but especially in this. Obviously, like ever since COVID has happened, I think the public are more cautious and also more curious in wanting to know more about their own body, just because I think during COVID, everyone just seemed to feel a bit helpless and had lack of control in knowing how can they make themselves safe from this new virus, right?
Yeah.
So I think obviously we've definitely seen a rise in people Googling things and trying to find resources in their own time. Again, non-medical background mainly, of thinking, okay, right, like what is this? What are these symptoms? And I think also just the way the habits are built in this country, especially in the UK, where, for example, I think traditionally, instead of just calling 999, if you feel like you are really, really ill but don't think you need an ambulance, you then call 111. And then actually, if you go on 111 online, you're self-triaging, right? So then you're describing your symptoms. You're then trying to find out, what are the possible causes of the symptom. And it's pretty much the same mind frame as doctors, right? So then now we've seen, since this whole kind of post-COVID generation, we've now seen that more doctors and more health professionals have realised that the first place that people try to find answers for is online. So actually, if we can try and combat misinformation, we should also go online and be like, right, now that you're here on Google search, click on me first because I'm a health professional. And so the information that we can give you is probably more reliable than if it was on like some weird Reddit forum, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So now that there is a whole rise in, especially new junior doctors who are creating an online presence, what kind of sets Hippocampus apart? And do you think Hippocampus is filling a gap? If so, which gap?
Yeah, so there's so many different ways to look at it. Number one is, like, you're right, that there's a growing trend of people wanting to know more about their own sort of body. They want a bit more control over their own health. They don't like the idea that like they have to be sort of, that medical education is sort of gatekept by institutions or doctors. And especially like, I mean, we see this literally in our friendship groups, in our families, where some people, they don't really know why they're taking their tablets. They don't really know how, they've never been explained their condition very well.
So they'll screenshot their prescription and send it over to you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? As in, like, there's so many things about their health that they don't understand. And I think unless you know a doctor personally, or you have a really good doctor, or someone in your family who can explain what's going on, the average person doesn't really know much about their own health or their health conditions, right? And so that's one thing. That's like a growing trend. There's also a lot of people who want to, they're introducing tech so that you can monitor your own health, your ECG on your Apple Watch. You've got, they want to check their fat percentage. They want to measure, their sleep cycles and things like that. So there's a lot of things going on where people are trying to...
A lot of monitoring.
Yeah, a lot of monitoring, and that obviously means that you want to do something with the information. Anyway, so that's one thing. The second thing is that you obviously have to create something which sets yourself apart, which is obviously true with anything that you make online. It has to have sort of a unique proposition, and I would say the Hippocampus is So I think we're very, very mission driven, and the mission is essentially to one, inspire like the youth to become doctors and to create more future doctors. And I'll jump into that in just a second. And the second one is to like we said earlier, to inspire the public, or sorry, to educate the public about their own health conditions. Okay, so the first one was to create future doctors. Now, why would you want to do that?
Don't you think there's enough doctors?
No.
Isn't medical school competitive enough?
Yeah, no, as in like obviously there's a lot of doctors, but at the same time we need a lot of doctors. We need actually more.
We need a lot of doctors that stick to being a doctor for a longer time.
Yeah.
Than now.
I feel like we kind of got to start from the roots, because I think when I think back to when I was sort of in secondary school and I was sort of applying for, medicine and things, you think what would pull me into medical school? And if you think about it, there's not much like besides like watching a TV show like Scrubs or with a house or anything like that.
You don't get much insight, do you?
Yeah, you don't get much insight,
no.
And you're really just going through word of mouth through like the older generations of what it's like to be in that career or what society thinks of a doctor in general. But we don't really know much about what it consists of, and so it's kind of dangerous later on for people to figure it out whilst they're in the midst of it. So you got a lot of people falling out of love with medicine, finding out it's not for them.
It's not as what they hoped it to be.
Exactly.
All of that stuff, yeah.
And imagine like how many people we could have caught with a net who would have maybe liked to do medicine, or maybe they just thought that it wasn't for them because they couldn't get the grades or something like that. When in reality, we both know that, like if somebody really wants to do it, it's not always just about getting the grades. It's about a lot more than that. Like there's a lot more than just being book smart that makes a good doctor.
Yeah.
And so my thing was to sort of create that sort of content that the youth will consume, that the public will consume, and think not only, okay, wow, this is like sort of educating me on these very important conditions to help me, to help my family, just give me better knowledge in general, but also if the youth are watching it and they're seeing, okay, this sounds pretty interesting, they might choose to study medicine because of the content that they've seen.
Yeah.
And I'd say, or vice versa, they might just say, you know what, doesn't sound like that's for me. And that's both of those reasons are important. Like you kind of you want people to realize what the reality of it is early on, and give them an accurate representation so that they can make an informed decision. And I think not only will that sort of find the people who are kind of almost destined to be doctors, but also to kind of tell other people that, you know what, maybe it might not be for you, and they're both okay. And I think that's a very important thing that we need to sort of address in regards to sort of the sort of pop culture or the sort of general understanding that people have of medicine.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I've just realised is if you guys haven't checked out Hippocampus yet, it's hippocampus.tv, right?
The hippocampus.tv, yeah.
And he's released loads of 60-second reels, so explaining a lot of like common conditions that you can come across, and explaining like the symptoms in 60 seconds and essentially why you get those symptoms. And one thing I realised is like, I think not only are you then trying to essentially make medicine more transparent for those who are interested, is you're also kind of helping them to think in that mind frame that you are supposed to when you are a doctor, which is the kind of thing, for example, when you start medical school, obviously it's all theory. You want to learn the bread and butter of why things happen and why they work the way they work. But actually, one of the main reasons that a lot of people do struggle in medicine is that when you're then applying it into the workplace, it's not theory, it's a lot of what we call clinical application. So, for example, like you're not going to come across, a certain cell in the body at work and then trying to figure out what's wrong. What you come across is a human being who's saying, this is how I feel and this is what's wrong with me. What could it be?
Yeah.
So I think in those 60-second videos that you've released, you're instantly presenting the public with, this is a person who's feeling like this. Have you ever wondered why that could be? Here are the potential reasons why. I think if, for example, I was a 14-year-old who came across Hippocampus and I enjoyed that content and I followed Hippocampus up until the age of 17 when I'm thinking that maybe medicine is for me, I would have spent a good 5 years thinking in that mind frame of how to approach a patient and how to figure why...
How to think like a doctor.
Yeah, how to think like a doctor. And I think that is probably the main reason why, if someone was to follow Hippocampus from an early age, they would probably really excel in medical school, but also have a greater chance at being able to cope with the job because they're already familiar with what they would be presented with.
Yeah, 100%. So not only like the sort of superficial kind of approaches to sort of obviously educate them on common conditions, concepts, but also just like you said, to get them to think like a doctor, to make them think, okay, this sounds pretty interesting. Like, okay, you got a 60-second quiz. What does this look like? You intrigue them, you make them think for themselves, and then you kind of like, you go back to first principles. Like, there's so much you could talk about any condition. I mean, you can go on, there's like 10-hour lectures you could probably give on any specific condition, but to condense an entire like condition, for example, in 60 seconds, there's a lot you have to leave out. So then you have to really focus on what am I going to keep in.
But then you build the curiosity to be like, if I stuck around for 60 seconds knowing about a certain condition, then it builds my curiosity to be like, okay, this is actually really cool.
Yeah.
So let me dig deeper.
Or
exactly. Having that interest that I actually want to know more about this.
Yeah, 100%.
Clever.
Thank you.
So that's one goal of Hippocampus.
That was one goal, yeah. And the second one was, so we sort of touched on it already, which was it's really to do with just educating the public because, like we said, it just feels like, I feel it's an inevitable thing that we sort of democratize like medical education. Like right now, it feels like it's gatekept by medical institutions. Like we kind of say, listen, if you're not a doctor, just like don't Google anything, just leave it to us.
Yeah.
And to a large extent, obviously that is a sort of, is, as a rough rule, that's okay, that's fine. But at some point, if this is like, we can't underestimate how smart people in society are.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the general public. Like a lot of people are obviously, majority of people are probably smart enough to understand the basics. We should be educating them. It should be like a public health initiative sort of thing, to be like, everyone should know. Just like how we try to explain how to pick up a signs for stroke, for example.
Exactly.
It should be almost common knowledge.
Yeah.
Or like, how we try to encourage people to learn about CPR, things like that. I think there's so much room to sort of innovate and disrupt in both, not only that sort of area, but also with regards to getting kids interested in medicine, in making them realize, is it right for you, and just kind of giving a taste of something like, of medicine. So those were the two overarching aims. And I think coming back to that original reason why I sort of chose a name, which was that like the kind of not overarching, but kind of like the vision for the future would be to create some sort of maybe unofficial online medical school.
Yeah.
Which is sort of for everyone. Like you don't have to necessarily,
have a qualification
or have fees, but it could be something where the public just look at, because we're speaking in a language that they can understand. We're breaking things down into simple concepts so that they can understand it. And also for people who maybe just want to see what medical school is like, they just go online and like there's a lot of like there's a lot of topics, a lot of conversations going around about how much we actually gain from medical school itself, and how much like external resources or online resources, these sort of independent sort of institutions or companies actually contribute towards our like medical training. Like if you think about it, when we were at med school, we would subscribe to certain question banks, textbooks, resources, and the question is how much can you sort of almost outsource your learning, not outsource it, but seek it outside of where you're supposed to learn it. And I personally believe that you could pretty much get almost all your theory just from online, like without actually having to go to med school.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to obviously apply and be present there and see patients and things. But if that is a possibility that you can, have that sort of thing online where, you basically learn everything you need to learn, then it would be cool for the Hippocampus to sort of aspire to kind of fill that role in the future. And so that's sort of like the, 5-year vision kind of thing.
That's great, actually. And I think touching up on, this is a whole nother conversation and it's out of the realms of this podcast about, is medical school, like, is it really needed in terms of being a good doctor and whatnot?
Yeah.
Just going to ignore that.
Right.
Yeah, he just spills water, guys.
Myself.
Got a bit too excited about Hippocampus. But I think, you are right that I think it's not just in medicine, but generally speaking, I think the attitude towards higher education and university has changed a lot, because now we're seeing that a lot more vocational approaches have shown a greater success, and success meaning that it's taken less number of years when you take a vocational approach in going into a career or going into a job with a high paying salary. And then we kind of think, okay, you know, is university really the best course of action? And I think with medicine, traditionally it's always been kind of academic grades driven. And that always puts a lot of people off from an early age, because then, for example, if you're in, you know, year 9 and you're taking your SATs, and I think they use, I don't even in GCSEs they use letters anymore, they use like numbers
and
but
stuff.
level 9 being like, oh, A star or whatever. But you know, if you were in GCSE level and let's say you didn't get, you know, straight A's and stuff, then you instantly think medicine is a write-off, right? And then you've obviously got that pressure in A level to get the 3 A's. If you don't, then not only do you think medicine is not for you, you think that you are not clever enough to be a doctor. And I see this in so many people. And actually, like, a best doctor isn't just about the grades, like we know. It is about understanding people, understanding symptoms. And like I said, like, if resources like Hippocampus can really break it down into very simple language, then it can help them realize that actually it's not as hard as people think. It's just a lot of work, and I think the nature of the job is just very intense.
It's also kind of like the other thing I forgot to mention was that in terms of like trying to disrupt medical education, or trying to disrupt, like, as opposed to all the other things already out there where you can learn about medicine, we mentioned that obviously you want to learn from a sort of trusted source, right? And there are some like really great like sources out there where you can get like information and stuff. But not all of them distribute their sort of like content or knowledge in a way that's sort of accessible for people, or is entertaining, or like, you know, is sort of directed towards a certain demographic. Like, for example, if you were like a 15-year-old kid right now and you'd be on Instagram or TikTok, what would you learn about medicine? It's probably either whatever ad agencies are trying to push to you, or gurus trying to explain, oh, you know, don't do this, don't put this on your face, etc., etc. And I think it leaves, like, we need more people to actually, we need to compete with them, and they can, like, you know, they're entertaining, they know how to make good content. And so if we're leaving it to them to sort of dictate what people should understand about medicine, common health issues, then we're in a kind of like really bad position, right? But so we have to actually also encourage our medical educators, who are like trusted professionals, to how to interact with the youth, how to find where they are, go where they are, and then, you know, and then sort of pull them into our world. And so that was a big reason for why I sort of, you know, primarily I'm focused on like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, to kind of like distribute this content, because essentially you've got to go where they already are. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
or where they're willing to, or where you see them going in the next few years. So for example, like TikTok is definitely becoming like the top social media platform. In the next 5 years, probably take over, and who knows if people will still use Instagram or and whatnot. So I think it is good to then go to these platforms where you think people will use. And I think generally speaking, like, I have never really been against people in the public Googling stuff and Googling their symptoms, because I want them to question stuff. I want them to critically think, like, oh my God, what could this be? And actually, we see so many cases of patients trying to, or just people, you know, before arriving to A&E, trying to manage their symptoms. And it's actually been life-changing. And they always think that we saved their life. And I always say, actually, no, what you did just before coming to the hospital is actually what saved your life. So actually, it's good that people take ownership. And it's good that, you know, people do like actually understand that, oh, is this actually the right information and whatnot. Because I think another thing is like a lot of people start to distrust doctors, and thinking like, well, actually, you know, I've seen cases I've read about online of cases of people's own experience, like, so when they question doctors, that helps us as well, because it makes us want to then
keeps us accountable as well.
Exactly. It makes us think, okay, should we do some more studies and seeing if this is a new thing and whatnot.
I mean, there's like a fine line in like even like how we approach creating sort of medical content, right? But on one hand, you want to empower people to be more sort of self-conscious and understand their own health condition, but at the same time, you don't want them to conflate that with 6 years of medical experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it doesn't
exactly,
compare. Like
exactly.
if somebody came in and said, okay, I think I'm having a heart attack or something like that, you could explain to them that, I mean, you do your tests and stuff like that. Obviously, as doctors, we can filter through all the noise.
Yeah.
Sort of like we've got like almost like an algorithm going off in our head. Like it's unlikely that you've probably got this, but once again, if they're only reading, oh, this could, a heart attack. If you have left-sided chest pain, you pretty much got a heart attack. Then so there's a big responsibility in the content that like we're creating as well. So I had to think quite deeply about that as well. Kind of like, how do I proofread it? How do I make sure that I'm not doing more harm than good with the content as well? Because you say one word, one line,
it could be misinterpreted.
It could be misinterpreted, and you can take people the other way. And so it's a big responsibility, especially when you're condensing stuff down and you have to sort of omit certain information. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about, like, what information to omit, why I should still go ahead with it. And so, yeah.
Because that is actually quite off-putting in terms of making content that that obviously the main aim is to provide value, right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people try to choose to make content where it doesn't really need to be proofread or censored or kind of advised by someone else. For example, if it's content that is mainly for entertainment purposes, it's very easy to make, and it's enjoyable to make in the process. But I think one thing that can be off-putting in terms of making medical content or just any educational content is that you feel this sense of responsibility online, and you think, what if I say something wrong? And also another thing is, especially when it's a topic that is always changing, medicine, we're always learning. So we always have to have disclaimers, 10-minute worth of disclaimers saying this is literally just for educational purposes. Always consult with your actual, not actual, but your regular doctor.
100%.
So what still made you want to go ahead with it, knowing that you have to be really cautious with this stuff?
Yeah, so the thing is, like, I had to remember why essentially I was going to do it. Sometimes you know that something could go wrong, but it's still important that you still try your best to do it right.
Yeah.
And, like, the risk of making small mistakes here and there doesn't outweigh the overall kind of overarching mission. And sort of what I was aiming for with this is also like makes me more vulnerable to making mistakes, which is that I'm specifically targeting non-medical professionals who may easily take that little snippet and misinterpret it, take it out of context. Whereas if I was teaching medical professionals, they would know that, okay, you don't always take everything for gospel. You have a base understanding, so you can question things. You say, okay, that doesn't sound right. You do more like reading, or you research more into it, right? Whereas if I build up trust and I say something, especially down the line, people may take that for gospel and think, okay, I've trusted this person in the past. He's got the credentials. He's advertising his credentials. And so, yeah, there's a big responsibility there. But the way I thought about it was that essentially the type of content we're trying to make is to try and influence sort of pop culture.
Yeah.
Not pop culture, sorry, pop science. Yeah, pop science basically means popular science. And I wrote that, like, I've only written one article for the Hippocampus so far, kind of explaining why we started the mission and the things. And this phrase was quite an important one, because essentially, when you're trying to break down a complex sort of topic or discipline to a general public, you have to speak in their language. You have to kind of summarize it down, make it more succinct, and in that process, you have to sometimes omit certain details, just because there's no need for them to know it.
Yeah.
Actually, but like at their
just
stage,
at
that stage.
Yeah.
For example, if I made a 60-second video, but technically there's 3 times where this may not be the case, and there's exception here, they'll get bored.
Yeah.
Number one, if they get bored and they stop listening, you failed at like trying to gauge them. And so you have to purposely and sort of strategically leave things out.
Yeah.
And that's the difficulty as well. But like at the Hippocampus, we do it in a very, very calculated way. Anything we leave out, any information we leave out, we question, does it need to be in there? Why did we leave it out? And so we sort of we do it in a way that we're comfortable knowing that why we've left certain information out. Because
it's one of the sorry to interrupt, but it's one of the reasons of like you trying to filter the stuff that you leave out is the fact that common things are common. So you like to include things that you know that do happen very, very commonly.
Yeah.
And that actually, if you leave something out, it's probably because data so far shows that it doesn't really happen enough for people to.
Yeah, no,
then,
yeah,
or
no.
how,
So
you
like,
know.
no. Even if we're talking about just common conditions, for
Yeah.
example, if I'm explaining the treatment, I may say that you got to be very specific with your wording as well. So sometimes I use wording to kind of like almost, we say you may be treated with this, but not everyone
Not
will
everyone,
be.
no.
Even though it's 99%, you can't say, because that 1% will be like, why am I getting different treatment?
Because you can't speak for everyone. You
Exactly,
just
you can't
no.
speak for everyone. So if I say 99% of people will have this medication, and the 1% watching it, like, wait a minute, I know of someone who got a different one. Shall I go back to my doctor and complain? So there's a big responsibility there. So essentially, we use language very carefully, but also we have to leave things out to squeeze it within a certain time to make things entertaining.
Yeah.
To keep people engaged, you have to omit certain information, and so I'm definitely going to write another sort of explanation of why we do so, and just sort of articulate it in a way that I can sort of refer people there to understand. Okay, these are, these guys are doctors and they're talking about things, but they're specifically leaving out information.
Yeah.
Because like if a medical professional, if he were to watch some of the videos, they might be like, I would personally have said this or this or this, but we go by our own sort of kind of methodology to kind of do everything in a very calculated way, essentially.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've spoken a bit about like the aims of Hippocampus and what you're essentially trying to do building up this platform. So now I want to kind of move on to the process and the system that you're using. So I think
the fun stuff.
Yeah, the actual real stuff. So it's good that you talk about something and say, I want to do this and I want to do that. But it's another thing in actually starting it. And I think that's probably the most difficult part. So you are currently working as a doctor. So alongside of that, it's not as if you've got a whole team at the moment, have you? You've started Hippocampus by yourself. So it started off from a Notion spreadsheet to now thinking, right, I need to actually make this content.
Yeah.
So I think what everyone would want to know, anyone who's similar wants to start something up, is how do you start? So in terms of, do you want to just talk about the planning and then also how you actually started? So the kind of equipment and setup that you used, how easy was it and what made you choose that kind of setup? Because, it's not as if you went to a studio and filmed the stuff. It's actually from your room,
in my room,
in your bedroom. So, yeah.
So, okay, so let's start with how, like, my thought process is when I was starting, right? So initially, I'm thinking, if I want to make this sort of the Hippocampus, do I start with products? Do I do in-person courses? How do I go about it? How do I want to get this information across? And like we said before, like my forte is try and create entertaining content or, engaging content at the very least. And it's difficult if you don't have a team, if you don't have a budget. You have to start off by doing a lot of the stuff yourself. But thankfully, obviously, I've sort of dabbled in, website creation, in social media, in creating content, in teaching, in scripting, in organizing or creating systems for content. So I could kind of like, I was a bit like, one stage ahead in terms of...
Yeah, because I feel like you've kind of, you spent the last few years building up on the skills that you would need to make something like this, right?
Yeah.
So filmmaking, videography on YouTube, and then script writing for your newsletter, and then just being active on social media and understanding, how to really get engaging. So I think that's quite clever. Do you think that was like a tactful thing, or like it was just like a very natural progression? Like
it will. What do you mean? As in like?
So as in like when you did start dabbling in the world of newsletter and YouTube and stuff, did you ever think that this was so that you have kind of these transferable skills?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, fair.
Like at any point, like if I see myself, like for example, knowing how to make a website. At one point, I'm just a bit of a nerd in that sense as well. I want to learn these skills, and just even familiarizing yourself with the tools, even though like I don't know how to code, for example, but I familiarize myself with website builders where you don't need to code, but it looks almost as if you can customize a website to look like anything.
Yeah.
So I familiarize myself with those tools to be able to like say, okay, now if I want to make a website down the line, or just know kind of what's important, what's not.
True.
And a lot of that just comes with experience, right? Like for example, I've not made a very kind of like polished website for the Hippocampus.
Yeah.
It's a very simple website. The main aim is to have links to the different social media, our social media handles, and also just like a sign up page to capture emails, for example. That's all the website is. The majority of the focus was on creating short form videos. The reason why I chose short form is that right now a lot of the platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, are focused on vertical content, less than 1 minute, and they're sort of actively competing against each other. So they're pushing out those sort of formats a bit more to people. So if you want to get discovered, it's actually a good place to get more reach. It may not, longevity of those videos is another topic.
Thing,
but I was like, how do I get this content out quickly and like, you know, to a lot of people
and create an impression?
Exactly.
Quickest, yeah.
And so the idea that if I create videos, short form videos, if I create short form videos, then I can basically repurpose it from Instagram to YouTube to TikTok without having to do any, like, not much extra work. So, and I really wanted it to be sort of media focused, essentially, because obviously you start off in my head. How I want to approach the sort of building the Hippocampus is to create content, get it distributed, build up an audience of people, and then sort of serve them. And then sort of, if I want to hopefully make it like a sort of self-sustaining business that later on, then you introduce some like paid products and services for a small percentage of whoever's interested in that. But at the very least, you've got the ball rolling, because once you've got an audience, then you can really start having fun with experimenting with different products and services and things like that, and seeing how best to serve them. So going back to sort of processes, so
it's definitely not an overnight process, because
it's not overnight.
It takes a few years to actually get the preliminary skills.
Yeah.
So now you kind of got a bunch of skills that you think are all kind of complementing each other.
Yeah.
You're right here, right now.
Yeah.
You want to set it up.
Okay.
Next
So
what?
Next thing, I was like, okay, so I need to sort of get these ideas that are flying around, put them down. So I use Notion. So it's a website that obviously you're familiar with.
Yeah.
I've invited you to like.
Yeah. I'm very new to Notion, and I'm actually so gutted that I did not use it throughout university. I just didn't know about
I don't
the
think
app
it was very big
anything.
about university.
No, I think it's big now.
Yeah, now it's sick, especially if, like when we're planning content, for example.
It's so
I use
good.
the databases.
Yeah.
For my weekly newsletters, for my YouTube videos. So I was sort of very familiar with it already.
Yeah. So you kind of laid it all out.
Yeah. Just setting up a system so that like essentially everything's really streamlined. Because if you're especially when you start off yourself, you're doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
You want to try and outsource or automate as much as you can, and so streamlining the process makes it really easy. So that like, do you remember I was sort of showing you like I'd make a template for the new video, so that literally I just duplicate it, that template
so
every
it's the
time.
same structure for each video, but the actual content is different.
Exactly, yeah.
Fine.
And then the same with like my thumbnails, for example, for YouTube and Instagram. Like I would use Canva to make a template, spend some time making it look nice, and thinking, okay, all I've got to do is to just change the name here. And especially when you're working on your own, sometimes you got to take small hits. Like ideally, you'd like to make a nice thumbnail for every single video, unique, blah blah blah. But you've got to take the small hits in order to continue to get the big wins. And so the most important thing for me was to be consistent. I was like, what I'm gonna do is for about 6 months straight, if I can try and upload daily, like that would be just see how it goes.
Yeah.
Because once a week is good on some platforms, uploading like twice a week, 3 times a week. But if you're trying to do just short form and you're trying to really rapidly,
daily is actually quite.
Yeah. Ideally, like daily.
And I've seen that recently. Actually, I've seen a lot of people who are posting reels daily.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've made like through batches.
Yeah.
And the reach has definitely, literally risen exponentially, like more so than I've ever seen in other platforms.
And if you like, there's a lot of people who just do it for like a week, 2 weeks, or a month, just to see like.
But they will get more reach than if they did once a week over like a couple of months.
Exactly. And so I set myself that target to be like, okay, let me. Also, another thing I did was I sort of scripted a bunch of the videos in advance.
Yeah.
So, and then I edited them in advance, took my time, because I hadn't even announced it to anyone yet. But I was like, once I start, I want to hit the ground running. I want to have a nice like sort of buffer of like a couple of weeks of content, so that in that time I can observe, I can sort of take my time to sort of respond to how people are looking at it and sort of pivot and stuff. You don't want to just only have one video ready for the first day and then you're like, oh damn, I can't think now because I need to make the next day and next day and next day.
Yeah.
And I won't lie, I'm kind of at that position now where I don't have a buffer. I'm kind of almost working on it daily.
Okay.
So it has been a bit of a struggle and I've missed days here and there. But overall, I'm sort of working towards keeping to that daily routine.
So before, on the day of actually publishing and telling the world that, hey, I've created this,
yeah,
what did you actually have, like, set up already. So you have the Notion spreadsheet,
The whole
and
Notion
plans,
spreadsheet.
and just a quick summary of like in your Notion spreadsheet, what sort of things did you have like covered? So for anyone who wanted to start planning stuff, what sort of important like categories would you tell them to kind of really plan before they start?
So I would,
something like
so I would say you have one sort of page for sort of master plan. You know, like your overarching. You kind of have you can play around with your own structure, but essentially this is like sort of strategy and how I want to do things and
like the core values and what you stand for.
Yeah, exactly. What we stand for. Maybe like who we're looking for. Blah blah blah. What the plan is down the line. You just kind of put those ideas down because
all the stuff that we literally
sort of the strategy and behind the scenes stuff. Then you might have another page which is like a database for the actual content.
Yeah.
So like to try and organize it the best you can because you don't want to be faffing around. You've got to organize obviously like your hard drives and make sure that your actual content is being organized in a decent place so that you can always refer back to it. I may need to use it in the future, or you know, like open stuff up again or change something. So you have to kind of be quite well organized from that point of view. I created a few like sort of graphic design, you know, like illustrations.
Yeah, and was that on Canva?
No, so some of it was on Photoshop just to make like the logo headline. I commissioned just from like Fiverr or Upwork the actual logo of the little hippo, but everything else like, I just wrote around it. So that it kind of looks professional, even if you
so
just
like the branding and stuff.
Yeah,
you got that quite early on.
Basic branding, kind of like logo, a header,
Yeah.
so you can put it on Twitter, Facebook, you know, TikTok, whatever. Come up with a few like taglines, which are like, okay, this kind of like summarizes where we're heading, where we're going, and so you prep all that, get the social media handles, get that all ready, so that once you start putting content down, people look at it and say, okay, this looks like it's all new, kind of, it's the ball's rolling. Let me, you know. And I also did this thing where I never announced it to anyone, the Hippocampus that we had launched. And I had been posting daily for about a week and a half. Right. So about 10 videos were already up.
But you just didn't tell like
I didn't tell anyone
directly.
And then I made a video and I was like,
do you think that helped? Like, what was the kind of intention?
The thought process, so
behind that.
So it's kind of like when you if you scream to the world, hey guys, I'm starting something, you're obviously going to get a surge of people come
and there's like nothing there.
If there's nothing there, they're just like, okay, cool. If they see a bunch
just
of
hype.
Exactly. And so like if they see 10 videos, they're like, okay, now I've come over here and now there's something to see. There's something to engage. They may watch all 10 of them, because they may not care down the line, but they'll be interested. You know, there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of people sharing your stuff in the beginning, or your friends and family, whatnot. So I think that definitely helped. If I said, oh, we're starting something, like, you get that surge, but you don't really capitalize on those, like, eyeballs, like, pointing your way. So, I did that, and then, what else did I do? Just sort of coming up with a sort of format, even, like, when recording, like, how do I want to do it? I want to film it vertically. These are some of the icons, like the intro, outro. I sort of rendered those already, so I can sort of drop them in.
So you started creating a lot of templates. Is what I'm.
I templated pretty much
template.
Template everything, so that I don't on the day I don't have to kind of redo the whole process again and again. Anything I can repeat. And
so
like,
automate,
exactly.
Automate.
That's the thing. Especially if you're doing it alone. It takes up a lot of time. If you're doing it part time, you know what I mean. Like, we have to save time wherever we can.
Okay, so the next part, I'm really excited to like talk about, just because like when I found out, I was just like, what on earth? Just because when I saw the end product and I realized how you actually filmed it, I just thought if anyone wants to watch this video, they literally would have thought that you went to a studio or had like a white screen and everything. Studio. Like, I mean, it's probably the best studio that I know, because like the content that comes out of that studio is.
I appreciate it.
That's not even. I was gonna say chef's kiss, but that's not even chef's. What is that?
I don't know. Very nice.
Very nice.
Very nice.
So do you want to tell people about the actual setup? Because again, another thing that really puts people off is thinking, I need the best equipment, I need to spend a couple of grand on getting an SLR camera, all of that, lighting, mics, all of that stuff. And then they just think, well, you know what, I don't have the money for it. B, I don't have the patience in learning how to, work these equipments and stuff. So how did you set up, and what kind of advice would you give for anyone who may not have access to those kind of equipment?
So, like, there's this age-old debate about, like, does gear really matter? And in some ways it does, in other ways it doesn't. The general rule is that when you're starting, nowadays, even the cameras that we talk about, like, this conversation is not the same if we had the conversation a few years ago.
No.
Like, nowadays the phones are just as good as mirrorless
Exactly.
cameras. So, like the end of debate, essentially, just you can use an iPhone. Like we're using an iPhone to record part of this as well.
It is much easier now. I feel like
Exactly,
now
yeah.
that if you have an iPhone, you can literally do so much with it.
Yeah, so much. Even like microphone, obviously audio quality. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to invest in a good microphone, or like they're
Mhm.
not super expensive, you may want to invest in that over a camera.
Yeah.
But seeing as I already had all this gear already, and I
Yeah.
wanted to make a good impression with sort of what I was making, and I already know the workflow working with the SD card is a bit easier actually for me than using like my iPhone.
Yeah.
So yeah, just I made the decision to kind of think, okay, I want to kind of make this kind of almost high production quality,
Yeah.
relative to kind of normal stuff you might see on TikTok and whatnot.
Mm.
And there's ups and downs. There's upsides and downsides with that. There's even like this kind of like theory that sometimes when people see professional grade quality and audio quality, they
Yeah.
automatically think ad.
Yeah, that's true.
And so like when you're scrolling through TikTok, if you see kind of
You
mediocre,
flick.
suboptimal quality, you actually think, okay, this might be more original content. But I made the decision to be like, I want to create a body of work that isn't just going to expire, that can be used later down the line.
Exactly, yeah.
And so that was another thing that I wanted to think, because I wanted longevity for the videos. It wasn't just me sort of talking about talking about latest tech and in medical education. I'm creating summary like videos for important conditions which can be used later down the line.
So you had the equipment anyway from doing all the YouTube stuff and just video filmmaking in general. So that was like one plus point. But like the one down point is that because obviously the kind of when you're making educational content, it's not as if you want to be having the same. It's not ideal to have the same setup as your personal YouTuber. It's like from your bedroom with the plant behind you and all of that stuff, right? So when it comes to educational content, you know that you are representing this educational platform. It's a bit more professional than your normal personal YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So how did you then kind of, bearing in mind he actually still did it from his bedroom.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of get the professional aesthetic and stuff without spending any money?
Yeah, without spending. I mean, I bought a lamp. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. I was like, do I want a kind of like whiteboard? Do I want a green screen behind me? Do I want to do it in a normal room? But essentially, I wanted to give the idea that this isn't. I don't want to give the impression that this is someone doing it from their room, because it almost looks like a personal project. I want it to be something bigger where we can get community involved, where there's multiple people involved.
Yeah, because you knew from a very early point that you don't want Hippocampus content just to be delivered by you.
Exactly, and it is. I don't want it to be about me. I may deliver some of the education, but it's about something much bigger than that.
Yeah,
the mission is much bigger than a sort of personal mission.
A community teaching a community.
Exactly,
yeah.
And so like I didn't want it to be me in my room, because people would be like, okay, we see him doing YouTube, and now we see him in the same place doing this. So
yeah,
this is kind of like a personal, almost like a personal brand sort of mission.
Yeah,
I didn't want that, so I basically just did it against my white wallpaper, my white wall in the bag. Put a little lamp behind me so that you're kind of like, you won't see the light bulb right behind. Took the lampshade off, but the light bulb. I remember doing one course where like a yellow light bulb will give a nice kind of like hue against the wall.
And it's not like a halo, but like just
just like a bit of like spices it up, rather than just having a white kind of like instead of just having a plain white wall.
Just a glow.
Yeah, it's a nice glow. Yeah, so it almost like you see me.
Like you're lit up.
Yeah, almost, but it's a nice effect, you know what I mean? Like, and
when you see the videos, guys, you'll know what he's talking about now.
Yeah,
you'll see the white background, and you can actually see like a little yellow
glow,
thing. But what that then looks like in the video is it actually looks like you are in a studio, like you've actually got like a white screen behind you.
Yeah.
And
then I've got like sort of either a bit of daylight or like an extra sort of big sort of light there. People can use like these little ring lights and stuff like that.
And what do you use to record?
Use my main mirrorless camera, the zoom lens. You kind of I zoom in so that kind of like I got the right proportions.
So it crops everything out.
Yeah, but I want it kind of a little bit out as well, so that I can punch in without sort of cropping my whole body out. Got the mic, on a stand.
Was that just the Rode mic on the boom stand?
Yeah, Rode mic on a boom stand, so it's like just out of sight. So you got good audio quality. I sort of got to time it so that the rest of my family aren't like around, like making like lots of noise. And then I record it in batch. So the process for like my whole scripting and writing thing is, I'll spend one day kind of writing as many like of those scripts as possible. I'm obviously consulting like other sort of trusted sources.
Yeah.
NHS.co.uk, patient.info, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So, and I'm kind of reading up about it and seeing how would they explain it to patients. And so I sort of amalgamate that and put my own twist on it. Maybe put some jokes in there.
Yeah.
Make it more engaging. You got to put a hook in the beginning. You got to sort of put an outro at the end. You got to keep it within 60 seconds. You got to tick all the boxes for like investigations, treatment, management.
So you batch record, and then and you obviously weigh the purple top because that's like the Hippocampus brand, isn't it? Purple.
I think it would be nice to maybe get some like branded T-shirts or something like that.
And that's actually quite clever in the sense that that also separates you from your personal YouTube videos as well. That you're in this kind of like uniform, but I also like that it's not scrubs. You know, I like the fact...
although I thought about it, and
I mean maybe purple scrubs.
It's not a bad shot because, I mean, as bad like as I was gonna say as bad as like kind of as sometimes cringe as it is seeing doctors wear scrubs for like just to show that I'm a doctor. In this case, it kind of gives a cue that okay, you're right.
Sorry, I think I'm just allergic to your platform. I'm joking.
Like a savage.
Anyways, yeah.
So like, if they're, what was I gonna say? Like, like when you're watching a video, if you see someone with scrubs, you automatically think, okay, doctor.
Yeah.
And you kind of want, like in this context, you kind of want them to kind of know that okay, this is sort of trusted information or coming from a doctor, because it kind of does actually help even subconsciously.
Yeah.
With like, okay, this is coming from a doctor, because I do want them to know that it's not coming from some random person. And yeah, maybe.
I think that's quite interesting because like I think you've got two types of people. What
would you say? Would you not wear one?
I mean, the thing is, I think because
You're too cool for that.
Yeah, clearly. I think because I specialise in paediatrics, right? I see a lot more younger people than other specialties in medicine. And what I found with younger people, and I'm talking from 16 downwards, is that when so obviously at work I wear scrubs.
Yeah.
And then most of the time I have my stethoscope on, other times I don't really need it all the time. When I don't have my stethoscope on, and especially in paediatrics, I talk very differently than if I was to talk with adult patients. I talk in a more kind of like a bit more playful, a bit more casual, because you've got to build a rapport with them, right? And what I've noticed is like when you kind of like strip down the whole kind of doctor persona, whether it's through taking off the stethoscope or changing the way you talk or just sitting down an eye-to-eye level, you just kind of, it just feels a little bit more kind of just approachable.
Yeah.
And so actually like I can imagine being on the other side. If I saw someone wearing scrubs, I feel like like I know you're representing the fact that you're a doctor, but then I also think that a uniform isn't the main kind of accreditation of being a doctor.
Yeah,
you know, and actually, like especially with something like Hippocampus, like yes, you're giving education through your experience as a doctor.
Yeah.
But I think the whole point of like medical education to the public is that, hey, we're not in a hospital anymore, we're not in a GP anymore, but from another human to another human, let's help each other out in me telling you information that I think that you may not be exposed to.
Yeah.
And just from another human to another human, without this kind of like hierarchy or professionalism in the way, let's just help each other out.
That's a really good point, yeah.
You know, so that's the way I kind of see it. But I like the fact that like purple itself, like, you know, anyone who like kind of reads branding books and stuff, like there's also like this colour wheel of what each colour kind of represents. And I think
I just had to buy the bullet. I was like, whatever purple means.
I think orange and purple are very much like purple's known to be like approachable yet professional. So I think people always like to use purple when they want to be midway. When it comes to educational, entertaining content, people like to use
There's
purple.
not many services which are like purple. Like normally, medical could be like blue.
That's why I would say don't use blue all the time, because it just seems really like it's not morbid, but just like, oh god, we are getting really serious here.
I think purple can be kind of like in the context of within medical education. If you're just kind of like purple, Hippocampus, you're very on brand. It becomes almost uniquely identifiable within that.
Very cool.
Sort of...
Purple's very cool and contemporary.
Cool.
Yeah, my go-to are purple and orange. But anyways...
Orange, I like orange as well, yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting, actually, like the psychology behind the colours that you choose. And it really does give a certain tone. So I think purple is a very good shout.
I think I was kind of like, if I'm choosing Hippocampus, the two kind of inspirations for the logo would be like a hippo and even the brain.
Yeah.
And both were kind of like pink-purple.
Yeah.
And I was like, do I make it pink? Do I make it purple? I think purple was a bit more kind of like a nicer choice. So yeah, I wear just like a very sort of Uniqlo
Yeah.
pink purple t-shirt.
And I think that's a good shout because, again, they've got all their time in the world to always see doctors and stuff in hospitals. Sometimes when they're out and they're just on their phone, it can be daunting seeing people in scrubs. A lot of people actually get traumatized by the hospital experience.
That's true. That is very true.
Especially young children. Like, I know kids who literally cry when they see me because I'm wearing scrubs. And I'm like, hold on, it's fine. But I can't.
Should I wear a mask?
Huh? That's even worse. Like, oh my God.
I'll take off the FFP. Let's start the video.
It's just so daunting. It is really scary. So
that's a good point.
I think as doctors we get numb to that stuff.
Yeah.
But actually we have to remind ourselves that it's not normal to see people in scrubs all the time because you shouldn't. Touch wood, if you're in good health, you shouldn't need to see that all the time. And if you do, like, that is really unfortunate. But I hope you can manage.
Yeah. But the counter argument to that is that, like, when you're fighting for attention, especially of the youth, like, you want them to see visual cues straight away. Okay, medic. Okay, this is imagine if you go to the video straight away. If I was wearing scrubs, they would see, okay, medic, doctor, or if you had a stethoscope, you already know something medical.
Yeah.
Either public advice, or that's probably what you'd assume. And then you start hearing me speak. Afterwards, like, you're right. If I were to do, like, maybe other sort of online courses or in-house kind of events, there's no need to wear scrubs because people already know why you're there for. I completely agree with that. But, like, say for example, sometimes it's kind of like you need to know who you're targeting, and, like, sometimes you kind of have to bite the bullet. Like, maybe down the line, I mean, if I've got regular viewers,
once you ever represent, like, once you represent Hippocampus after a long time, you probably just don't need these props. Because I actually see it as props. And I think we contradict ourselves where we're trying to get rid of the white coat era, but all we're doing is we're slowly actually replacing it with another uniform.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's necessary. And actually, we forget
Was there something wrong with the white coat era?
Because you've got the white coat hypertension, isn't it? So when they come into, like, clinic and they see white coat, instantly the blood pressure goes up a little bit, and you're like,
But they would just change the name to, like, Dr. Hypertension.
Yeah, literally. I just don't think it's needed. But each to their own, isn't it? Let us know what you guys think. Like, do you always need, like, some
I thought the white coat was
uniform?
pretty cool. Made me feel pretty cool. Only as a med student, though.
You need a lot more than a white coat to be cool. Anyways.
You're gunning for me today.
Literally. But, okay, so you then started recording from your bedroom. You recorded it in batch. And I think the huge chunk that people misread is the fact that it's actually the editing process. That's a lot more. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah,
so editing is probably the longest part. So right now, the kind of the time scale to make even one video. So say for example, it's best to understand it in batch. So in a day, I could probably write up to 7 scripts, 7 videos, and that's 1 week in advance. So if that would give me a buffer for 1 week, if considering that I wanted to make one video a day. The next day, I could probably record in the morning, record for 1.5 hours, for example.
Yeah.
Get all those videos sort of recorded, and then I would have to. There's a lot of little things in between just putting it and start editing.
Yeah.
Like you have to, for example, I put it through, get the SD card out, put it in the laptop, open up a software, get rid of, cut through all the chunk of the footage, get rid of all the bad takes, and then once you've got kind of like the final bit, then you need to start the editing. You need to, crop in right. You need to get the color correct, get the color looking okay. You've got to get the audio sounding right. You've got to put in the text. You've got to put in all these little fine pictures and GIFs, which we use a lot of.
And I like that you do use a lot of the memes and things. I think
hopefully just make it a bit more entertaining and to kind of
it's very Gen Z language.
Yeah, Gen Z language.
It's like meme is my love language, or meme is your medical language now,
mate. And sometimes it just says so much more than words as well.
Yeah, it definitely does, and it's more memorable. Yeah. Again, but it's clever. It's good.
But but even searching for those is almost an art in itself, because say for example, if you're looking for a procedure.
Yeah, number one, I'm trying to find a meme.
Yeah, I'm trying to find non-copyrighted images.
A meme for colonoscopy. I don't even know what's gonna come.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't. Yeah. If I type in colonoscopy, am I gonna put in the first image I see in Google? Hell no. I'm gonna choose.
And it's gotta be a bit appropriate as well. You can't just make jokes.
It's gotta be it's gotta be very tasteful as well. And sometimes I'm very conscious about making jokes about conditions because I'm I don't want it to come across as if I'm making fun of the condition.
Yeah, you can't have dark humor.
Yeah, you can't have dark humor. Because it's offensive, you know what I mean? You got to use certain language, even recently.
Got to be considerate.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking literally down to the fine details of should I be saying diabetics or people with diabetes, because there's a whole thing about that now, about actually labeling people just by their conditions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So little things like that.
Did you show anyone like the videos before you publish just to make sure that you're not something like? Because I wouldn't know. Like sometimes you just unknowingly don't know that you're being.
I feel like at this point in time, that's a good point, because like right now I feel like we're moving too fast to get everything proofread.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I need to run it by people probably like you or other people who both know the medical side.
Yeah, and the kind of
the creating,
pop science
the
side.
pop side, but also in somewhere in between have a sort of some morals. You know what I mean?
I don't know why you would come to me for that.
I probably shouldn't come to you, but as in like I try to go through the script again and think with that hat on to be like, okay, is this messed up? Am I taking it too far? Can I make a joke about this?
This is why medical content is actually really stressful.
It's so difficult.
And I respect those who do make medical content because I would only probably do a day in the life, but I still don't feel confident in myself to like make medical content without realizing that I might be inappropriate or not.
But to be honest, if you're doing it from a personal side, it's actually a bit easier. Right, if you're doing it on behalf of a company, your whole brand will be dictated by maybe someone like, say for example, if I hire someone to make a social media post and they make a very tone deaf post, that would affect the brand.
For sure.
If you're personal, you'd be like, sorry, I made a mistake. Cool. You know, people are forgiving to people. They're not as forgiving sometimes to brands, because you'd expect, you know, there's people involved. There's money getting into it, and
so you've used like the word company just there.
Yeah.
So am I right in saying that you want this to kind of expand into, obviously you want to get more people on and stuff.
Yeah.
So where do you see Hippocampus going in the next year, and how do you actually intend on doing it? So I think, you know, we obviously hear so much like these are my goals and stuff, but I think what I want to know, I think what everyone else wants to know is, how do you intend on actually expanding this? So what do you have a plan in place? Like, how would you approach it? Because that is daunting, isn't it?
I do. I've got a plan, or sort of how I would ideally like to where I would like to take things, kind of like ideas for products and services, and sort of who we're targeting, not only from like from a content perspective, but also if we were to introduce paid products and services, who would we do it for? What kind of products we would do?
Potential sponsorships and
all that sort of stuff. But mainly kind of like our own in-house kind of services. Like where would we take it? What kind of product or service would we make to help this thing become sustainable? What would make sense given the audience that we have? And so partly I've planned some stuff, but at the same time, I feel like you have to be kind of like be quite open-ended in the sense that sometimes what you intend doesn't always work out.
Might even be better.
Exactly. Like if you think about things like Instagram, for example, I think Instagram started off as an app to help people find food places. It was actually about the whole map and stuff like that. Yeah. Then they realized people were just using pictures to share that. So you have to be willing to pivot towards whoever, your audience. And so at some stage, I don't want to just kind of like cater to whatever my audience.
But be open at the same time.
Yeah, but at the same time, be open. So you got to find that middle, that balance.
As long as it aligns with the values of what you want Hippocampus to achieve.
Exactly. And you can always sort of expand from there. So ideally, right now, I would like for the youth to find, to like the content. But it may be that I find, a sort of content market fit with a different demographic. It may be sort of the general public, like people above the age of 40 who just are interested in their own health. Or it might be med students who are just like, oh, you're actually explaining medical conditions really
much
easily.
better than my lecturer.
Exactly, like, so you never know where it could go, and so I'm kind of open in that sense. But as long as sort of right now the overarching mission and the values of the company are to sort of continue going in a certain direction.
So right now, you're sort of a one-man band because you've actually started introducing other people, haven't you?
Yeah, so just started. So we've got community manager, social media manager. She's really sick.
So what's her role as community?
So at the moment, so like I was sort of trying to curate these new roles and sort of to make templates, make them easier for people. Because at the same time, it's very difficult, especially like if you don't have investment, if you can't put your own money into it at the start, and you're not actually bringing in revenue. How do you bring someone on without paying them? Yeah. Or like paying them immediately.
Like how do you motivate them to be
exactly.
Like, please give up your time?
Exactly. So it's a very difficult thing, right?
Tough.
Unless you co-founded it with people like who are willing to kind of go through, years.
There's always that question, like, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
Which I think is a fair question.
Yeah, 100%. You have to address
You've got a lot of stuff on your plate. Like, why am I going to do
absolutely. And like when you're thinking about bringing someone on for just a moment, they become your audience. You need to think of what am I doing for them?
Yeah.
What are they going to get out of it? And so obviously kind of giving like equity, or saying that, you know, you have basically offering whatever you can right now, and sort of also kind of explaining to them the vision and where we want to take things, so that if they want to come along for the ride and they would enjoy doing, you know, just being a part of it, that's also another big thing. Especially like there's a lot of people who are very altruistic. That means like selfless, right?
Yeah.
I hope so. Actually,
I think it does.
It might mean the opposite.
Yeah, let's just cut this bit out for
everyone. Yeah, let's cut that bit out. But they're very like almost selfless in the sense that they're willing to help out other people, or get involved in medical education, but also sometimes just have a bit of accreditation to say that, oh look, I've taught, I've contributed, I've learned a few skills.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to gain from that. But so the community manager, social media manager, essentially looks after the social media.
Mm-hmm. Is it all social media, or just like one platform at the moment?
It was kind of like the initial, what I had in mind for the role has sort of changed, and then I sort of actually now she has her own sort of her own little series. So once a week, it's called the Creator Spotlight, where we sort of highlight creators who we really like to watch.
Great idea.
And so like she can basically reach out to them, network with them, chat to them, and say, you know, we're gonna make a video about you, etc., etc.
So that in itself is kind of like loaded off the time from you as well, because then she's doing
1 day a week.
Because it is, again, to reach out to other people,
have that conversation. Yeah. And I think that's actually, it's quite a nice thing to be able to reach out and network with people on behalf of like, otherwise, like if I were to randomly reach out to someone who's got a lot of following, they may be like, sorry, I've not got time. But if you're saying something like, can we invite you to something, or can we make a video about you, we'll share something about you, they're more willing to kind of maybe respond. And it's sometimes just nice to just be able to be the person contacting them.
I think having the Creator Spotlight is actually quite good as well, because it's a good way to introduce other people into your company as well.
And like just sort of share, like, you know, have both our audiences sort of merge in the middle, and just see if there's any.
And I can see how you're creating this community now.
Yeah, like slowly trying to introduce sort of like new series. But yeah, so currently I still do my series, which I'm aiming for like close to 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I write it, edit it, and I even upload it. It you know, like I said earlier, like I don't have a big buffer at the moment. It's kind of like I do it, and sometimes I publish it straight away because I'm editing on the day.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't make sense for me to just send it over to someone else.
Yeah.
So I still do that, but now she sort of has her own series and may respond to some comments. I mean, I log in quite every day essentially if I'm posting. So if I see comments, I might reply, etc., etc.
So are you looking for? So you got a community social manager.
Yeah.
Is that the role?
Yeah, social media manager, social community.
And then are you looking for other roles at the moment?
Yeah,
this could be a very good way, and be like, hey guys, if you're interested.
Yeah, it depends on when this episode actually comes out.
Yeah, exactly. True.
No, yeah. So like, I kind of, ideally it would be nice. It would be nice to sort of, number one, find an editor. But that is a very tricky thing, because you've got to be able to edit, but also know how to edit medical education content. So editing well is one thing. It can't be too pricey, because I feel, you know, like I may not be able to afford it at this point in time.
Yeah.
But also they need to understand the small, like the nuances of creating like taste for medical education. You got to get the tone right.
Yeah, and I think now that you've been editing in a certain style, because you've edited, they've really got to match that. Otherwise, it might just. Yeah, and I think the dangerous part is if you're editing really important parts of what you're saying. I
mean, I could always just sort of touch it up, but the thing is,
that's also going to take some time. Like the whole point is to get rid of that.
And I end up micromanaging. So like, if I see something, I'm like, I might as well.
It might be hard to edit something that's already been edited, as opposed to you doing it yourself.
That's it. So that's the sort of, that's what I'm thinking. That's the sort of things I'm dealing with right now in terms of. But I do really need to open up more time.
Yeah.
Because right now, like, I could make more videos and more frequently, or have better to manage my time better if I were to just focus on the scripting and recording, and send it over, and then they do all that, and hopefully have someone to upload it. Because once I get on social media, I'm there. I'm like, I just end up being lost on the timeline. So ideally, I don't want to be even uploading my own videos. I'd rather someone else do it, so that I can kind of like, or even take a step back and just have a look at the analytics and stuff like that, and make decisions for the good of the overall company, and also introduce other people to maybe hopefully create their own series. Maybe bring in some people who can source videos from the community and share that kind of align with our vision, to just kind of like build something bigger than just what we're producing in-house.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
And I guess like the next bit to really touch upon, and I think, it is a really, really big topic, but I think it would be good to just to kind of give our kind of like opinion and our thoughts about it. And that is essentially the end goal always is to try and find a way in which you can monetize. I'm not saying that's the sole goal,
Yeah.
but considering that, you are giving so much time into making something that is valuable to so many people, what is like your thoughts about monetizing and like the approach, and like, is this something, like, how do you plan on Hippocampus in being able to be a profit making?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting topic. So,
and you may not have the answers now. That's the thing. I think it would be very unrealistic to have all the answers now.
I don't have all the answers with regards to how we'd become profitable.
Yeah.
But obviously, that's something that we sort of just got to figure out as we go along, and just sort of have a plan, maybe be a bit flexible. But with regards to sort of the idea behind why we want to be profitable, is like I know why exactly I want that to be the case, which is I feel like if you want something to kind of like survive on its own, it's got to be self-sustaining, and like there's no such thing as sort of free money. Like even if you're sort of doing it as a social enterprise, the money has to come from somewhere, or someone has to pay with either the time, energy, effort, money, etc. The best way to do things, in my personal opinion, or the best sort of balance, is the sort of freemium model, where you offer some stuff for free. That applies to the vast majority of your audience, customers, whatever. And then there's obviously some people who, a small percentage of those people who may even want extra. They want more. They're like your true fans, your super fans, and you may be in a unique position to offer them something of value, which they feel like, okay, if I exchange my money for this, like I feel like I would get a lot of value back. And so it's just about finding the right product for the right kind of people once those people are there. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, like that sort of concept, especially sort of in the medical sort of world, is quite like debated, that should we be charging people for things like medical education, and a lot of people have like very strong opinions on it. I have quite strong opinions on it. But the overarching sort of my mentality with regards to that is sort of, if I'm going to be charging someone for education, as long as I don't have a monopoly on that education. For example, if there's an exam that everyone has to pass to become a doctor.
I was just about to say that there's a difference between providing content into getting into medical school, and then providing content because of just education without that goal of getting into medical school.
Exactly. Yeah, that's another topic. So firstly, say for example, if there's an exam that you have to sit to get into medical school, and I'm the only one who can prepare you for that test or whatever, and that means I've got a monopoly on that sort of, then it becomes almost unethical. You can argue it's unethical because I can put the price at 1K and everyone has to pay it,
and that is not accessible to everyone.
If there's a free market, which there is in regards to a lot of the medical resources, that means that someone can charge 200 quid, someone can do it for free. May the best person win, essentially.
Yeah.
And then in that kind of environment, some people will say, oh, why does this person have to charge £200? They're wrong for doing so. My personal opinion is that you can charge whatever you want.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to buy it. You're not forced to buy it.
No.
As long as it's not a necessity and there's other options available. Someone who wants to charge however much they want, they can. If it turns out to be a bad product and you don't like it, people will give it they should give it a bad review.
Yeah, they should give it a bad
to
review.
Warn other people. You learn from your mistakes. You let the free market decide, right?
Yeah.
And that's something like, obviously, that's one topic. The other point was what you said, which was getting into medicine. Kind of, you're almost like, people need to get through stuff, but what the services we probably provide is more about sort of getting experience in medicine. So already off the bat, we can say you don't need this to get into medical school.
This is just to make you aware.
Exactly. It's sort of like a luxury, almost a luxury experience where, say for example, like I always use the example of, for example, Lamborghini.
Yeah.
So if somebody said, oh, why is a Lamborghini so expensive? It's like, well, I need a car to drive. You could say, you don't have to buy that car. You can buy another car to drive. It doesn't mean that Lamborghinis shouldn't exist, and you don't go out and complain that Lamborghinis cost you. You understand that it's a luxury thing for people who want to buy that, who consider it valuable to them, and the concept that a lot of people, it's a very simple concept, but like it, even for me, only clicked in like a year or two ago, is that when anytime somebody buys, at the point where someone buys something, they have deemed the thing that they've bought more valuable than the money they've exchanged for it. Otherwise, the transaction wouldn't have happened.
No, probably not.
Like, if I see coffee for £5 and I buy it, the reason why I bought it, I know what coffee is. I know it's a rip-off.
You think it's worth...
Yeah, at that point in time or whatever, it's more valuable to me than the money. So
Yeah.
then you make the transaction. If it's rubbish, then obviously you complain and stuff afterwards. But at that point, that thing was more valuable to you, right? And so my aim is to hopefully make products or services that are valuable to people, where they feel like, it's worth the money. I know another thing is that sometimes unethical marketing is another thing. So, for example, if I were to, going back to that kind of example of making, for example, an entrance exam course, I think that you need this course to get in. The thing. Then that's kind of like, I don't agree with that.
For sure.
That's unethical marketing thing. No. Creating the feel that if you don't have this, you're gonna lose out.
Yeah, or if you don't have this, you're gonna have poor health.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like, you don't need a monopoly to do that. Unethical marketing. There are some people who do that. So staying away from that and staying away from having a monopoly on something, basically create the best product you can, and monetizing a product or service allows you to build better products and services.
Exactly. So I feel like when you are offering that option of like, pay for this thing, I think it's a two-way street. I think if I think you're doing a really, really good job in providing value in not only my life but in so many other people's lives, then I would like to invest in that and also help you be bigger. If my 2 cents can help you expand and make even better products from your already existing good products, then I feel like I've contributed into that, and I've also provided you feedback on how you could probably improve. And, or, for example, like nowadays in social media, you get, the beauty of it is you get direct feedback, right? You got people commenting on your content, you got people DMing you, all of that stuff. And so many people must have suggested so far, can you do a video on this condition, or can you do a video on that condition? Or they might ask you some questions down in the comments saying, I've heard about this condition. Is it true that this and this and this? And you start engaging in online conversation and basically an online kind of debate about just learning, really, isn't it? Like a classroom kind of picture online. So I think it's a two-way street, and people forget that.
Yeah, and like, say for example, if I wanted to bring the best teachers,
you need money.
You need money. You need to incentivize other people. Like later down the line, like if I like hopefully have courses and stuff, I would like to bring in talent. I would like to bring in editors. I would like to
expertise.
I would like to pay them for their hard work. I'd like to be generous with, like, I want them to think that, look, this is not only a company or a platform which does the best for a viewer, but also does the best for the people within it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, ideally, if I could right now, I would love to bring on people with different roles and pay them very generously to make them think, wow, this is like, not only this is fun work, but I'm getting remunerated for it quite well.
But also, one of the big potential about Hippocampus is that if people do start investing in Hippocampus, you've got a really good opportunity in trying to bring on people, for example, like specialist senior consultants, for example, because obviously there are so many people who, aren't lucky enough to be able to get a consultation from the top people in their specialty, so if you can somehow, for example, get, I don't know, a really top cardiologist in the UK who's done so many studies and audits and stuff, if you having more money can mean that they can even provide at least half an hour of their time to say something that's really, really life-changing for people, then you're already improving accessibility, aren't you? And
people need to understand that, like, if I wanted to bring that cardiologist on board, or a good cardiologist, for example, in that situation, I have to drop everything for a moment and think, what does that person want?
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, it's not just enough to be like, just can you do it for free?
No.
You have to respect their time and be, understand that for them, like, a lot of time isn't money. Like, they could be doing something else, which is bringing...
Just have a life.
Exactly. So you have to bring something to the table.
Yeah.
And so monetizing basically helps you with that. It's so there's a saying even in that business, which is like profits, like basically sales, like basically solve all problems, sort of thing. Which is true. Like, if you look at half the top companies right now, they're not even profitable. But once they hit profitability and they've got good margins and it's self-sustaining, it means that your project will survive. Like, I don't want to create something which I don't have the time to do later on because I can't. I'm doing it for free and I'm losing out money. And everyone else who's contributing, they can't afford it because they're not getting paid from it. That's not a situation that I want to be in. I want it to be in a position where both our team, the company, is benefiting, but also the audience are benefiting from something, you know, that is mutually sort of there's a value exchange there, which is like, people are happy with, and there's a lot of companies out there who do that like very well, and that's the ideal. That's what I would like to sort of aim for.
And I think, like, as well as like the, you know, so many people in the public wanting to be a part of Hippocampus, I can also see it working the other way, where I think a lot of clinicians who might not really understand the worlds of like social media and all of that stuff, like I can see them really seeing Hippocampus as a place where they might want to get involved and being like, hey, like, I've actually got really like cool stuff that I want to share. Like, because, you know, I think people think that the public don't have good access to doctors, but actually often a lot of doctors feel like they don't have good access to the public, you know, because they know that they, you know, no one really reads like, you know, articles and publications and stuff, and like the only thing that the public go by is what the NHS post on their website and stuff, and sometimes that, you know, that is just really the basic knowledge. So I think a lot of clinicians might want to see Hippocampus as a place where they like, you know, be approachable enough to be like, can I also, you know, share my 2 cents on exactly.
That would be like ideal. Like, I mean, there's so many ways it can go.
It's just like a middle kind of platform, isn't it?
But it's such early stages now. It's only been like, actually, how long has it been? It's been like maybe just a month, just under a month.
Very early.
But like already there's almost like 40 videos up.
40 videos in a month, like, I can't imagine what's in like 6 months.
No, it's been less than one a day, but there's been quite a lot. Like, you know, taking baby steps, slowly starting to grow. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to check in like down the road.
Well, I'm definitely excited, so I think it'll be good. And so far, it's just great. It's really, really good.
You've been a big help as well. You've got to give her the shout out.
You're welcome. I actually did a Hippo logo, which I thought was quite good.
She did a mock-up logo, which was pretty good.
I'm sorry, but I think your current logo wouldn't have been anything without my mock-up one.
The mock-up was the inspiration. I was like, I don't want it to look like this. No, I'm joking. That was sick.
I think I'll just use that for maybe if I want to do, you know, a parody Hippocampus, who knows? But yeah, thank you so much for sharing everything about Hippocampus.
No, you're welcome. And then, this is a very me-focused podcast.
But this is what it's all about. I think it's about sharing like what we're actually currently doing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
And sharing it in real time, because, you know, we're at the early stage of Hippocampus, and hopefully in the future, when we do more seasons, we'll look back and just see like, oh my god, do you remember that time in the first season when you only had like 40 videos and you know? But
and I think it's good that like at the moment we've got multiple sort of projects that we're all working on. That means we have like skin in the game. Like we're talking about the active, actually doing something, as opposed to just saying, you know, we don't want to just be commentating on what it might be like to do something, but like we're actively working on stuff as well. Which is the thing. It helps. It definitely helps, because it's all we're sort of time stamping our role in that journey. So like, we can always look back at it like maybe a few weeks down the line, we'll be like, oh, I was completely wrong, or like I've changed my mind.
Exactly. And I think just hearing like your journey from it and like your thought process, like for me, I don't know about everyone else, well, I hope for everyone else too, it's made it seem like less daunting to start something up, because it is scary to do things on your own with limited resources and limited time. But I think you really help dissect like kind of like just a systematic way in, you know, just doing little things at little times that can make a very, very big product.
And like also that you don't have to have everything figured out. Like I don't have everything figured out. I mean, it's pretty evident that like I'm still pretty flexible. You know, I don't have a big team. That, you know, I've made mistakes. I've not even kept a schedule like I would like to. But you slowly you take each day as it comes. You take baby steps, and slowly, next thing you know, like a few months in, you might see that you've done a decent amount. You should be like kind of proud of it.
And it's definitely a good example of how you can combine medicine with art, because I think there's still a lot of debate about that stuff, but I think nowadays like it is possible to combine the both, and I think it's the best combination to deliver like the best medical education. So we're all excited, and we can't wait to see how it goes. So should we conclude
go for it.
Episode?
What's the next episode? I reckon we need to dig into your social enterprise.
Yes, well, hopefully by then it'll be a bit more developed.
Shout out to Scully on it.
That'll be for the next season.
You got to bring the t-shirts.
Yeah, I'll bring the t-shirts.
The
t-shirts are pretty cool. I designed them myself. Just saying.
Okay, maybe not.
New clothing line coming through. Anyways, cool. Thank you so much for listening to the end of this season, and thank you, Faisal, for sharing.
Have we finished the season?
Have we?
I feel like...
or is there one more?
I feel like
okay, well, I'll just...
It may be the end of the season. It may not be. But basically, I think we're coming towards the end of sort of wrapping up the first season of this podcast. Let us know, like, if you have any questions about sort of, you know, the topics that we mentioned today. I think we've even been discussing like introducing a sort of Q&A sort of thing, so that
Yeah.
so that we can interact with you guys, so that if you have any questions or if you want to, some way that we can actually communicate about with each other.
And we'll read your questions and essentially try to answer them, really.
Yeah, we'll do our best, but just obviously we don't know everything, but we're still figuring out
we're figuring it out, and we are just trying to make it.
Oh God, I knew that was coming.
Oh God, I can't help
At the
it.
end
I'm
of
sorry.
every single one.
I'm sorry. Anyways,
That's good. Keep it on
thank you
brand.
guys, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Peace.
That went quite long.
My belly was grumbling.
Literally.
Banyo was mad.
Foul sounds.
I was like.